Okay, here we go. All right, welcome to All Things Food Podcast. I'm your host, Peter Kim. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I am actually recording this again, as I mentioned last episode. I'm recording this before I've released any, so I don't know if people are watching or listening. No idea. I am trying to keep these episodes between 20 and 30 minutes long so that, you throw it on your commute. You want to hear someone talk about food, you got a podcast where someone talks about food. There you go. You're welcome. Last week on this podcast, I talked about what criteria I thought of when it comes to evaluating a city for the quality of its food. To be considered a food city, how should a city be evaluated by that? I say last week, but in my reality, see, we're living on alternate realities. In my reality, it was 45 seconds ago. Right? Doesn't it right? Right? Like 45 seconds ago was my last episode. But for you, it was one whole week. Whoa! Time travel. Amazing. That's really cool. So, I don't even know if I mentioned this, but this is All Things Food. I did mention that. And this is where we explore all things related to the wonderful world of food. I don't think I mentioned that. Today, on today's podcast, New York versus Chicago, which is the better food city? New York versus Chicago, what is the better food city? And I'm going to be using my categories that I established last week, which again was like 2 minutes ago for me, my time, and my reality in this timeline. Speaking of timelines, did you guys ever watch the show Community? If you have not, download it, find it. I don't even know where you find it, but there's an episode called Chaos Theory. I think it's called Chaos Theory. Let's look it up. Community Chaos Theory. I think yes, it is. So anyway, it's a great episode, great, amazing meta show. Taken too early off the air. They have this episode called Chaos Theory where they go into different timelines, and I sometimes feel like we are in an alternate timeline where bad things have happened. Anyway, that's my reality. Categories: affordability, accessibility, variety, and excellence. I literally have a blank, not spreadsheet, a document on my computer. I guess if we're going to talk about if it's going to be a versus episode, then I might as well give them a number, an arbitrary, spur of the moment number, because I have not planned this, because I feel like it would take the momentum, take the spontaneity out of a recording. So you see all of the ugliness firsthand, first run. Which is the better food city? New York versus Chicago. You think about New York versus Chicago. What category of food do you usually think of? To me, there's one obvious one. What's yours? New York versus Chicago food. Which food type are you thinking of? Again, if I were a betting man, and I am a betting man, but if I were a betting man on this, I would bet that the majority of people thought pizza, right? Chicago pizza versus New York style pizza. And yes, food does cover pizza styles, but I'm not going to get into just that today. I'm going to judge each city as objectively as possible according to what their rating is on my little made-up categories. Let's talk about it. And if you're confused about the categories, I'll probably explain it throughout, or you can just watch or listen to last week's episode. First category, affordability. Affordability. Now, I actually haven't put too much thought into this because I actually want to share my honest opinion and, just going to have it a little bit spontaneous. Affordability. New York versus Chicago. Oh, you know what? I think I know now. I think I know. Okay, so New York versus Chicago. Let's give this a rating system because, there's 4 categories, and if I gave like 2-2, it'd be a tie. And fuck ties, man. If you're going to make a judgment, then make a fucking judgment. Like state of preference. I hate it when it's like, it's a tie. So I'm going to give it numbers out of, scale of 1 to 10. New York, affordability. I am struck, again, in my brief time, I spent just a week in New York. No, I've spent 2 weeks total in New York. Half of which was spent in like just hardcore foodie adventure stuff. I was surprised by the affordability of a lot of the stuff. For example, and I mentioned this last week, Joe's Pizza, an iconic pizza place that was delicious and very affordable. Each slice, I think, was like $3, $2.50, something like that. Go find out how much is a slice of Joe's Pizza. The cheese and the margarita for those who are interested. And I was really surprised. I was pleasantly surprised that like there's a lot, not just Joe's Pizza, but just there's a bunch of markets. I felt like we passed by a lot of restaurants. I think this is the best pho I've ever had in my life, and that was in Jersey City, which is technically not New York, but it's a 10-minute subway ride to Manhattan. And, people commute. It's pretty much an extension of New York. And I think it's the best pho I've ever had in my life. And it was like, what? $8, $9? Which for America is excellent. And, even after you factor in tip and tax and all that. Of course, you have expensive places as well, but that's true for both cities. And that's true for any really, big city of the world. You're going to have, high-end restaurants. But New York, I was surprised, you got your food carts, you got your hot dog stands and stuff like that. So for New York food, I think I'm going to have to give this for America, I think it's really good. And then I think about other cities in the world and it doesn't really, I got to bump it down a little bit because there are cities in the world where, damn, you can get amazing food for like $2, $3. But like not just one type, but like so many types. So I'm going to have to give New York an 8 out of 10. It's entered in. I can't change it unless I press backspace, but I'm not going to. 8 out of 10 because there's a lot of great food on the street, and even like iconic places are pretty damn affordable. Chicago's an interesting one. Besides your basic like restaurant chains, I can't think of a place where it's like really cheap that I can go pick up really good, cheap, affordable, tasty food. Can't think of it. Go to a restaurant, could pay a heck of a lot in tax and tips, just like any restaurant in America. But I think Chicago restaurants specifically have like a higher tax or something. Like there are a lot of taxes. Dude, I'm not sure if I mentioned this only like 10,000 times. I lived in Seoul, Korea for 7 years, and everything there's so cheap and they don't have tax. So when you buy something at the store, the actual money that you pay out is actually what's on the label. When you go to a restaurant, the prices on the menu are the actual amounts that you pay because there's no tax, no tip. And then you factor into like, the currency exchange rate, and it's like hella cheaper than eating out in America. Chicago, I'm just like struggling. I'm seriously struggling. I mean, there are places, there's like the Works in Morton Grove, and there's like cheap-ish stores. But off the top of my head, I can't think of too many. I mean, it's not that common. There's not nearly as common as New York. I'm going to have to give Chicago like a 6 out of 10. I told you I was objective. I mean, I'm just like struggling with like affordable eats, good eats in Chicago where, you're not like eating the leftovers of the leftovers. You know what I mean? Like just good, solid food for not too expensive. I feel like in Chicago, if you're going to eat good food, you're going to pay for it. Yeah, I don't know. Am I wrong? Is this weird? I don't know. I'm surprised, but when I actually stop and think about it, it's like, dude, there isn't a lot of affordable, cheap eats. Let's talk about accessibility. Oh, God damn it. Are you serious? Seriously? Okay, well, let's do it. Let's go through the categories. New York versus Chicago. Let's talk about accessibility. Whose subway system is better, New York or Chicago? Easy answer, New York, right? Am I crazy? No. Like the New York transportation system is way better. The subway versus the L. I'll take the subway any day. Huh. Lyft and Uber have really even the playing field in terms of getting around. I mean, I know New York traffic sucks even worse than Chicago, but neither are like awesome. Either way, you got to drive everywhere, right? New York, yeah. But who drives? Here's the thing: who drives in New York? No one, right? I mean, like I don't know who's on the roads, but like I feel like people who are in the city, like downtown. Is it Manhattan? I don't know. I'm so ignorant about this. I apologize to the New Yorkers. But like most people just take the train. Chicago, everyone drives. Everyone drives. I bet you even most of the people who are taking the subway are also have cars and they drive most places. Accessibility, New York. Now again, and then I compare it to my experiences in Asia. I've never been to Europe, so you maybe you're like, why isn't he talking about like Paris? Why isn't he talking about Rome or I really want to go to Ankara actually. No. Oh shit, Istanbul. Is Istanbul the same thing? Istanbul, Turkey. Because I've heard so many great things about it as like the bridge between the East and the West, between Europe and Asia. I'd love to go there. I digress. Accessibility. New York, takes it compared to other Asian countries. Let me just tell you, the Seoul subway system in South Korea absolutely destroys the subway system in New York. Absolutely destroys. It's so cheap, so clean, so efficient. I digress. That's why even though I'm saying that the New York subway system is better than Chicago transit, it's not going to be as high of a score because I think about other countries in the world. But I feel like in New York, you can get to a good restaurant pretty easily. Versus here in Chicago, again, I'm thinking about my neighborhood, which is a really lovely, lovely neighborhood, and I really like it. But I walk a few blocks, and then okay, that's great. So there's like maybe half a dozen restaurants within 15-minute walk, which is actually not bad. Which is why I'm not going to give it a horrible score. But compared to New York, I got to give New York. The props. I'm going to give New York like maybe a 7. Maybe a 7 because when I think about again other parts of the world, it like accessibility. I will say, man, for most Asian countries, at least the countries that I think of when I think about accessibility, Asia crushes the West. 7 out of 10. For Chicago, I don't know, man. Like again, I think about like my favorite burger place up in Des Plaines called Paradise Pub. I think about my favorite, buffalo wing place, Buffalo Joe's, Evanston. I mean, that's like right there. That's a 20-minute drive. Pizza places are easy to find, but just like to go to like my favorite barbecue restaurant, Smoke. From here it's about 20 minutes on a good day, 25, 30 minutes on rougher days. It's not a quick thing. And then like even good barbecue. Where's the good barbecue around me? Like forget about my favorite barbecue. Like where can I get good American barbecue in Chicago? It's like Green Street Market, but that's like far, bro. Like Supply Barbecue is not bad. Not my favorite, but not bad. But that is also like 15-20 minute drive. Not even like Subway or the L or whatever or the train. I'm gonna have to give Chicago a 5. 5 out of 10 for the category of accessibility. Right now at the halfway point, we are looking at New York with a score of 15 out of 20. Chicago with a score of 11 out of 20. Let's talk about variety. New York. Let's talk about New York. As I mentioned, before, New York, this is where the world comes to New York. You know what I mean? And you have amazing pizza and barbecue. Hometown barbecue in Brooklyn? That was amazing. Of course, you're gonna have great pastas and I had a great pho and a lot of great dishes. Like in terms of variety, and then again you think about like cheap street food versus like the high end, fancy pants restaurants. I gotta give it. It's either a 9 or a 10. Either a 9 or a 10. I mean, for variety, how can I not? I mean, New York is almost like the standard. I think I gotta give it a 10, 9. Let's give it a 9.5. And I can do that because I'm making the whole freaking system. So there you go. It's done. It's typed. It cannot be reversed. Okay. Let's talk about Chicago. Chicago for variety. I mentioned this before as well. You get amazing Mexican food, great barbecue. You can get great pizza. You can get great. There are good ramen places. Some of them have been overrated, but you can get a whole variety of foods. Is it as diverse as New York? How can you say that it is? I don't know. Listen, like Chicago was founded, or at least it, from my understanding, I could be completely wrong and be talking on my butt, but it has a lot of like Russian and Polish, heritage. So that's why you have the Maxwell Street Polish. That's why you have the Italian beef, which I know is not Russian or Polish, but it's that heavy gravy stuff. That is the legacy of Chicago food, the main legacy. And of course, you have these great restaurants. You got what's his face, Rick Bayless doing his Mexican thing, and Beverly Kim doing the Korean American thing. And there's so many people. I mean, like so many. What was it? How do you say his name? Grant Achaz? I don't know. I've seen Chef's Table. I saw the documentary. It's awesome. It looks awesome. It looks amazing. At Alinea. So, yeah, I mean, you have a huge variety of cuisines. Does it compare to New York, though? I don't know. Like, how can it? Right? How can it? I don't know. Am I going crazy? Like, how can you say that New York has more variety of cuisines compared to how can you say that Chicago has more variety of food compared to New York? It's just weird to me. It's just weird. Yeah, yes, we have a Chinatown, but New York's Chinatown is kind of legendary. I'm trying to think like. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I love the legacy of Chicago food. I deeply, deeply adore a good Italian beef sandwich. I'll give it a 8.5 or 9. I'll get 8.5 or 9. Let's go with 9. You know what? I'll give it 8.5. That 9 was a pity 9, but no pity here. We go for the objective, subjective truth on this podcast about food, where it's a completely subjective topic, by the way. So everything I say is like my opinion, right? So if you didn't figure that out by now, then you just gotta chill. I wonder if the mics can pick up the growling from my stomach. I had Popeyes for lunch, leftovers from last night, and it was awesome. My stomach's happy. I don't know why it's growling, though. Maybe I'm hungry again, because it was a few hours ago. Yeah, it's like really active. Can you hear it? Can you hear it? Okay, darn it. It was like grumbling a lot, like 30 seconds ago. Let's go with excellence. Excellence. How many categories do they have? Like best in class. Can we just say like New York and Chicago pizza? Like, I know it said that ties is bullshit, but I'm gonna have to give this a tie in terms of like pizza because they're just so different. If you don't like Chicago pizza, that's fine. Don't eat it. If you don't like New York pizza, really? Are you sure? Are you sure you don't like New York pizza? Really? How can you not like New York pizza? I can understand why people don't like Chicago deep dish pizza. It's so freaking heavy. It's so heavy. But it's awesome. That's the thing. It's so heavy, but it's freaking awesome. So, I don't know. They're so different, you know? If you're eating one of them, you're winning. You're winning if you're eating one of them. So let's not get angry. Let's not fight amongst ourselves about which is better, huh? Like, let's just agree that if we're eating pizza, like if we're eating good New York style pizza, or if we're eating good Chicago style pizza, if you're happy, you're winning. Excellence. There is no question that New York has among the best restaurants in the world. Amazing, great restaurants. So does Chicago. They might not be exactly the same restaurants, of course, but that's two things cannot occupy the same space, right? Unless you're in Star Trek and you're phased into each other. Oh man, that was a big growl. Excellence, gosh, I'm gonna have to give it both a 9.5. I'm sorry, it's a tie. Sorry, not sorry. But Chicago and New York both have amazing food. Why haven't I given it a 10? Because I don't know. It just feels weird to give it a 10. Because I don't feel confident giving any city a 10. Because I've never been to all of them, I guess. But it's like pretty awesome. Like, let's shit on another city like Lincoln, Nebraska. You're not gonna get the same variety of food in Lincoln, Nebraska compared to New York or Chicago. Like that, those are the differences that I'm talking about, right? Like, Lincoln versus Chicago, no question. Like, I've never been to Lincoln, by the way, so pardon me for my ignorant opinion if this is incorrect, but I'll give Lincoln like a 3, right, or a 2. Or a 4, something like that. Maybe 3. Just because, like, what could they have? Again, this is speaking out of ignorance because I don't know Lincoln, Nebraska. But New York and Chicago, they're both world class. They both have amazing, awesome types of cuisine. Regardless, like if you want a cuisine, like an amazing type of dish, at the very least, whether, we talk about accessibility, I put New York as winning over Chicago. But if you want like the best of something, you can find it somewhere in New York or Chicago. So I'm going to give that a tie to both of them. So let's add it up using my Asian math skills. 8 plus 7 is 15, I know that. Plus 9.5 is 24.5. Plus another 9.5 would be 33. So New York gets 33. New York 33 out of 40, which doesn't seem like that great, but when you break it down, I feel like it, yeah, I feel it makes sense. Chicago. Okay, 6 plus 5 is 11, plus 8.5 is 19.5, plus another 9.5 is, dear Lord, see, I was all confident in my Asian math skills. 17, 18 plus 10 is 28, plus 1 is 29. 29 out of 40. For those keeping track, 29 is less than 33. New York wins by 4 points, which I feel like is actually a smaller margin than I expected. Again, I was born and raised in the suburbs of Chicago. I love Chicago, but you get some perspective living, in a different place, and you're like, maybe everything is not perfect, but it's still really good. I mean, there are so many restaurants in Chicago that I want to go to that, you just can't have a $70 meal every week. I can't. Maybe you can, baller. Nice job. But I can't spend, $70, $80 on a meal every week, or 2 or 3 meals that cost $70, $80 every week. If I were to eat fully satisfied at one of these places, a lot of these, bistros and these gastropub things where they have like amazing beer and like, microbrewery, blah, blah, and these amazing like umami, nacho burger things. I can't afford that stuff every week. So I'm slowly like making my way. First, I need to go around my neighborhood, find the awesome places, and then and then work my way to other neighborhoods. It's a process. New York versus Chicago. New York wins for the better food city. Props to New York, man, because like I'm not sure if I could live there because it's so freaking busy. I guess like the real people. The people who live in Manhattan, they're not real people. They're like they live in a different world. But just like out in Brooklyn or Queens or whatever, join my brothers and sisters in Queens. That's more chill, but it was just so intense when I was in Manhattan. And even like, when I go to downtown Chicago, it's not that bad. It's busier than these neighborhoods, than the neighborhoods around downtown, and way busier than like, of course, the suburbs, but it's not that bad. So there we go. That's the podcast for today. Again, I'm not saying that I prefer New York over Chicago. Kind of different animals, but I just need to call it like I see it. Yeah, there you go. That's the podcast for today. Thanks for listening and watching. If you are, again, this is going to be like episode, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the lineup. If there's a topic you'd like me to cover, I'd love to hear from you. Email me at allthingsfoodpodcast@gmail.com. Subscribe on iTunes, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. The music at the beginning and end of the show is by Dexter Britton. I will be working on show notes that I'll put on my website, especially if there's traction, if there's like some sort of positive response. I don't know. I'm just figuring this stuff out as I go. Show notes will be found at peterbkim.com. That is my personal website address, /allthingsfoodpodcast. peterbkim.com / or / that's a / isn't it? All Things Food Podcast. Thank you very much for listening, watching. Stay hungry.